Good morning, everybody. We are going to get this started in just a moment. I got on just a minute early so we can let everybody get in here before we get started. So we are lesson 4, thinking into results. If you've been following along, we are in lesson 4, and this lesson is called The Secret Genie. So this actually may be the most important lesson out of all of them. And it's one that I've seen Bob talk about and repeat just constantly throughout his career. And so some of you may be familiar with some of the things I'm saying today, and that's okay, because repetition in this situation is not going to hurt you at all. We want to have repetition. Repetition helps us understand. So if you're coming in from all over the world, wherever you're coming from, say hello in the chat. And we will kick this off. So I see everybody's just piling on now. So just give you guys like maybe 10 more seconds before we kick this off. Hello from Wisconsin. We've got Finland, New Jersey, Atlanta in the house, Ontario, Canada, Hungary, Missouri. All right, California, Texas, Pennsylvania, Trinidad. All right, literally all over the world. I don't know what time it is there, but it's 9 o'clock here in Las Vegas time, Pacific Standard. All right, I'm gonna get started just because I know we want to jam as much information as we can in about 30 minutes or so. And for those who are getting on here late, just know there will be a replay in the back office. You click training, and then there's one little tab up there that says TIR, that's thinking into results. So you'll be able to download the lessons there and replay this as often as you need. All right, so let's get into it. So I'm going to introduce you guys to a concept that has literally been responsible for taking the bottom line of multiple companies to multiple billions of dollars. This is a very important concept and a powerful one at that. And I've been able to kind of understand this and put this into my life, although I'll be honest, when I was actively learning this stuff, I didn't really understand it all the way, and I don't know if anybody really understands it all the way. It's constantly, you're learning deeper truths about the same thing the more you study it. But Bob, I'm going to use him a lot, of course, because this is his content, this is his material. And so I'm going to tell a little bit of his story here and how he kind of got into this and how he came across this concept. So let's travel back in time when Bob Proctor first learned about this. I think this is important to know a little bit of the backstory before we get into the real meat and potatoes of this conversation. He was sitting in a fire hall in Toronto, where he's from. He was a fireman at the time of things, and he was earning $4,000 a year, and yet he owed $6,000 a year. And all he could think about was, how am I going to get out of debt? He was thinking debt. And he had a good friend at the time named Ray, who had approached him sometime during this, mess of his life that he was trying to kind of fix and unravel. Now, keep in mind, Bob had no formal education, no business training, and he only had a couple months of high school. So being a fireman was the best job that he could ever get at the time. But he was introduced to Think and Grow Rich. And he talks about this almost every video he starts out. He says, let me tell you about how I found this book, right? Well, Ray Stanford was a guy, he even named his child Ray after this guy, I believe, that gave him this book. And he said, Bob, you're quite capable of changing the direction of your life. And, Bob at the time was like, right, like changing his life was the furthest thing from what he was even thinking of. All he was thinking of really was, how am I going to get out of debt? How am I going to pay my bills? How am I going to support my family? How am I going to, many of us go through the same thing. And even now, when you hear these topics and, subjects, you're probably like, but what do I do with this? Right. So this guy gave him this book and said, hey, if you just start reading this, you're quite capable of changing your life if you just do what this author says. And Bob didn't believe that. There was no way he could believe that at the time. But what he did believe in was that Ray's belief in him, which got him to start reading. In fact, he told this guy he couldn't read, even though he could. He just couldn't read very well because he didn't really have a lot of schooling. Now, I'm going to tell you guys a little bit of how I fit into this. I was introduced to this book in 2014. And similarly, like, I thought this was honestly, I thought it was like another religion, and at the time I was getting away from my church and the programming and everything like that. So I really wasn't interested in another philosophy, at the time in my life, and nothing against church or anything like that. Just for me at the time, it just wasn't what I needed. I needed that spiritual connection more than anything, more than rules, regulations, traditions. I know Antonina talked about that a little bit on her live the other day, but I didn't believe it, because all I could really wrap my head around was my current results and what was in front of me right now. And then same thing when I met Josh for the first time, he had all these other results in his life. He had a completely different experience. And yet I had been in the network marketing industry too, but I had a different experience. So it was really hard for me to wrap my head around the fact that I could create my future, So I didn't believe in me. I had limited formal education at the time. I was a young mom. I was 19 years old, my first son, who I gave birth to while his dad was deployed in 2005 in the war in Iraq, in Fallujah. And, I was literally just trying to survive. So the guy that brought me this book, said I could change my life. I thought he was just completely out of his mind, and he read this book every day. And I was like, why would you read this more than once? I couldn't even get through the first chapter, And, in that time of my life, when I was really young, you guys, I bounced around from job to job. My dad even said, my stepdad, who I feel like is my real dad, he's like, you're like a super ball, like when you were first 18 going into the world. Like I just bounced around all over the place. I couldn't figure out what I wanted to do, but I could figure out really quickly what I didn't want to do. And so I didn't stick to anything, because I knew right away, I don't want to do this. This isn't making me happy. This is not for me. So the idea of changing my life was the furthest thing from me. In fact, I had to collect a series of bad results before I decided to take things seriously in my own life. So, Ray went to Bob and said, if you're going to change your results in your life, you better have a good understanding of who you are. And he said, Bob, who are you? And he said, well, I'm Bob Proctor. Like, he thought it was a silly question. And he said, no, you're not Bob Proctor. That's your name. Those are just two words. Those are two words you're probably going to use the rest of your life, but that's not who you are. And he said, okay, well, then I am this. I'm my body. He's like, you're not your body. You never see somebody that say, am hands, am head, am body. No, you say, this is my hand, my head, my body. These are things you have. They are not who you are, right? And so he couldn't really wrap his head around like where he was going with this, but he did know that it was pretty confusing, the fact that he didn't really have a good idea of who he was. Now, if you were in the 2019 convention, I stood on stage and I talked a little bit about this, about the roles we play. You may be a mom, but that's not who you are. You may be a dad, but that's not who you are inherently, right? You may have a lot of different hats you wear and different roles you play in this life, but that's not necessarily who you are. So you're not your name and you're not your body. So if you're going to change your results, you got to know who you are. So, you can go to the most prestigious university out there. You can get the highest level of degrees. You can get, in fact, I got PhDs in my family and master's degrees. And you know what? They brag about it all the time. They've collected so many degrees and pieces of paper that justify their knowledge. And yet they have very little understanding of who they are. You could go to the best colleges in the world and still come out of there with no idea who you are. In fact, you could take a whole degree on economics and not know anything about how to make money. And that's something we should think about as well, And I know in network marketing, we say it all the time, you can come in here, you can succeed. You don't necessarily need to have all the degrees. In fact, you see that picture right there? That's my degree. It took me a long time to get it, 8 years for a 4-year degree. I was super not motivated to go. The only reason I finished is because I didn't want to pay for my student loans. And I knew as soon as I stopped, those bills would start coming in. So I kept going. Talk about motivation, right? And so Ray asked Bob if he'd ever read anything. He said, no. He said he couldn't. He said, well, start reading. And so he did. He started reading. Now, life's rather strange. The most important things that we need to know in life are the things we don't learn in life. If you take 100 people, by the time they're 65, 95 of them are going to be broke. Only 5 will have made it. Those are not really good odds. So there's something wrong that we're learning as we're growing up, as we're going through these educational systems. Now, there's nothing wrong with education. Education's great. I went through it. In fact, I'm putting my kids through it. But there's missing pieces in this system that we need to know in order for us to succeed. You see, 1 out of the 100 will be financially independent. They will be wealthy. Sorry, they'll be wealthy, right? And then 4 of those will be financially independent, and the rest of them will be broke. Now, by the time these people are age 25 and they're going out into the world, they have a glimmer in their eye. They're so excited about life. They really know that, they really have positive intentions for the direction they're going to go. But by the time they're 65, that's all gone. Life is beating them up and they've lost their dreams altogether. And so why is that? Well, there's a problem with men today. Earl Nightingale said it best, and that is that men and women, people just don't think. They have now mental activity does not constitute thinking. Okay, so this is why this is thinking into results. The average person has no concept of how to earn income. And another thing we don't learn through this educational system and beyond that is we don't learn how to make decisions. That's why you have so many people running around asking, what do you think I should do? We don't learn how to make decisions, and I was reading one of Bob's older books, and one of the first couple of pages in it said, if you have struggle with making decisions, you should get the book Decision Power by Harvey K. I did just that, actually. And so if you're struggling with decisions right now, get that book. It's really good. There's not very many copies, I feel like, in circulation, so it may be difficult to find. It's not an ebook or anything, but if you can find it, that's a phenomenal book. So all this goes back to not knowing who we are, as Ray had pointed out to Bob. And he got him to start thinking, and he got him to start reading. And he said, Bob, the secret of the ages are locked up in books. In fact, there's a book named that by Robert Collier, Secret of the Ages, what it's called. And so he started to read and he started to do things, and things in his life started to change. And yet, he wasn't really understanding how things were changing in his life. He set a goal of earning $25,000 when he was earning $4,000. He wanted to make $25,000 so he could clear his debts and breathe a little bit, right? Well, he started thinking about how he can earn money. So he set the goal of $25,000, but within that first year, he was making over $170,000. Now, how does somebody go from $4,000 a year to $170,000 a year in less than 12 months? Well, after that, he reached over $1 million. Now, if you asked him what he had done to do that, he couldn't tell you. And this bothered him a lot, and, people had come to Josh and I, like, how do you guys do what you do? And honestly, like, without all this awareness, we probably couldn't have told you. We would have said, well, we started a business. Well, we started CBD oil. Well, we started HempWorks. Well, those are, and people asked Bob, how did you do it? And he said, well, I started a business. He said, well, somebody said there's good money cleaning floors, and he wasn't proud, so he's going to clean floors. So he started a business all over the world cleaning floors, and that's how he started making his money. That's how he did it, right, in the physical. But that's not what he had done in his subconscious programming, and that's the part that was really bothering him that he couldn't figure out. Now, most people that are successful don't spend their time wondering how they're doing what they're doing. They're just happy to have the results, And in a similar way, like Bob, I wanted to know why I had changed, because I had come from such a low place in my life. My family had disowned me. I had, 2 divorces under my belt by the time I was 25 years old. And I had been let go or quit every job I had ever had. I had all these bad results in my life, and suddenly I started thinking differently, and things started changing. So, but here's the interesting thing is Bob couldn't figure out why he had changed either. And he started giving the book to people. He started giving Earl Nightingale's recording of the strangest secret to people, and nothing was changing for them. And so his mind was in a state of confusion. Anytime your mind's in a state of confusion, your mind will quickly change to a new topic. It doesn't want to stay in confusion for too long. It goes into something else. It starts thinking about something else. When it's in order is when you can really focus, right? So his life and my life had changed rapidly, and yet he couldn't find anybody that could tell him what had actually happened, until he met Leland Val Vanderwall. Now, this guy was in British Columbia, and Bob was in Chicago at the time. And people had said to him, go listen to this guy. He's wise. He knows information that most people don't have. Go to his seminars, and maybe you should go meet him, because maybe he can tell you why you had changed. Maybe he can explain, what's going on in your mind that had created these massive results in such a short amount of time. And so Bob flew all the way over to Vancouver, British Columbia, and he went to this guy's seminar, Leland Val, they call him Val for short. And as soon as that guy started talking, Bob knew inherently that this guy knew what he was talking about. And so after the seminar was over, Bob went up to him and said, hey, I would like to spend a couple hours with you. And Val looked at his watch and said, I'd like to spend a couple hours with you too, but I got a flight to catch. And Bob said, well, I didn't mean right now, I got to catch a flight too. And he said, well, where are you going? He said, I'm going back to Chicago. Well, Val was really impressed that Bob had flown all the way from Chicago to British Columbia just to see this guy. Bob said, well, I would have walked all the way here if I had known what I was going to get. So he said they decided to meet up in Toronto because he was going to be there in a couple of weeks, Val was, and that's where Bob was from. So they met at the Skyline Hotel. What was supposed to be a couple hours turned into 3 days there at the hotel. Bob's interrogating this guy, trying to figure out what this guy knows. That's so important, and Val said something very interesting to him. He said, listen, you live on 3 planes of understanding. Bob said, I know. He said, no, you don't know, because if you knew, you wouldn't ask me the questions you're asking. So shut up and listen. And then he smiled. All right. So he said, you are a spiritual being. You have an intellect and you live in the physical. And so he went from the mind, he was trying to explain to him this, and then he went to, now describe your front door. Now, Bob's thinking, how does he go from the mind to my front door? He couldn't figure out where he's going with this, And so Bob said, okay, he started describing his front door. And then he said, okay, now tell me about your car. Does it have 2 doors or 4? He said, 4 doors. He said, what color is it? He said, white. What color are the seats? It's tan. So he's recollecting all these memories of things he already has seen in his life, right? Images he's already put into his mind. And he said, okay, now, tell me what your refrigerator looks like. Now, Bob kind of stared off into space for a minute and said, okay. He told him what it looks like. And he said, see, now you've gone to your kitchen. Mentally, you've just gone into your kitchen, and so that you can remember what that was. He said, now what I did was, he said, I said a light message, okay, through my vocal cords, set a vibration into your brain. It went through a nerve passageway, screaming through down this electrical light message that's happening. And then what happened is you have cells of recognition for the things you've already seen. You had a picture come up on your mind, right? And he's like, okay. And so he's recollecting the things he's seen before. And he said, now tell me what your mind looks like. And he's like, well, I can't tell you what the mind looks like, right? And he's like, are you inclined to think of the brain when I say mind? He said, yeah. He said, well, your brain's no more your mind than your fingernails are. That's just body part, right? So he said, the problem that we have is that we think in pictures, and nobody's ever put a picture to the mind before. And that if you have a picture of the mind, then when you're consciously trying to change something or changing your results in your life, you can recall that picture. You see, you have no cells of recognition for what the mind looks like. And because of that, it's really hard to tackle anything that's going on in there, because we think in pictures. And it's the same in business, as in your health and everywhere else. You have to have a picture to operate with. Lots of people going for analysis, and they do this for years and years, not knowing what's wrong with them. And it's because they don't have a picture of their mind to operate with to change those results. Now, the person that drew this photo or this picture that I'm going to share with you guys right now, I'm going to pull up the whiteboard here in just a second, is Dr. Thurman Fleet. Now, he was a man in San Antonio, Texas, that first came up with this drawing in 1934. And he said, there's a problem in the healing arts, and that's that we're treating symptoms. We're not treating causes. And until we treat the whole body, mind, body, there's going to be no health, right? You go to Western medicine, what do they say? Oh, you have, they say you have this symptom and this symptom and this symptom. They give you a prescription for those symptoms. They don't ever treat the cause. And that's why there's never any healing, right? So you heal one thing over here, you treat one symptom over here, and then it causes 3 more symptoms over here. So then what do? You take 3 more pills over here. And then before you know, you're on 20 different things, tackling 20 different symptoms, and you never get to the root cause of your problem, right? And so it's the same thing in sales organizations, the same thing in your bottom dollar, in your results that you're getting right now. We're treating the symptoms of low sales. We're not treating the cause of low sales. So if we don't treat the cause, there's never going to be any permanent change. And so this is the drawing that he drew. So let me get it up. And I know some of you guys have seen it, and that's okay, because we want the recording back there for those who have not seen it, so that if you want to expose this material to anybody else, you have that tool to do so. All right, let me open up my whiteboard, and please let me know if you can see this once it pops up here. Can you guys see my whiteboard? All right. Here we go. Let me see. I'm gonna draw this right here, just like Bob. I feel like it's so funny. I feel like when he passed, he was like, "Hey, can you keep teaching this? Because nobody's listening up here in heaven." And I was like, "All right, I'll keep on going." All right, so we're gonna draw here. Now, first you see this, you probably think this is pretty funny, pretty silly. Like, what is this? And why do we have a stick person here? This is a stick person. Now, this is the drawing that he drew. He said, now let's represent the top half here as your mind, and the bottom half here, this is the body. Can you guys see that all right? Conscious, subconscious. All right. So now there's many parts of the mind. There's not just two, but there's two that we really want to focus on. Okay. Now Val said to him, he said, let the head represent the mind and neck down the body. He said, now this is not really how it is. Okay. The mind is in every cell of the body. Mind is movement and the body is the manifestation of the movement, but we've got to have a picture to operate with. So what's going on in the emotional mind, which is the subconscious mind. So I'm going to put an E here to represent that. Is what is going to happen in the body. The body's going to carry out the actions there, okay? And this is our thinking mind. Now, interestingly enough, there's only 5% of activity happening in the thinking mind, although we think that that's where everything's happening. 95% is habits and habitual programming, and that's in the subconscious mind, okay? And so what we need to know is this. These are my little power signals here, okay? There's a great power flowing to and through us, and it never stops. And as this power flows in, we have the ability to think, okay? We have the ability to think. Now, what does that mean? Well, we have the ability to choose what we're going to do with the power that's flowing in and through us, okay? And now most people are not aware that they are creating everything in their life. And they don't realize that because they're getting bad results, it's because they're emotionally involved with the wrong ideas, okay? So there's a power flowing in. This is represent the power here, okay? Flowing in. 1, 2. Can you guys still see this? 3, 4, 5. Okay. Now, these right here represent sensory factors, okay? Sensory factors, we can see, we can hear, we can smell, we can taste, and we can touch. These feed information into the consciousness from the outside world. We've been conditioned to live through our senses our entire lives. All right, now think of the report card. I know we talked about that in a previous lesson. Okay, that's a picture of the past, and yet we're treating kids today based on what's there on their report card, right? And they're creating a belief system about how they are as a student based on what's on their report card. It's like the most important thing in their life, right? And it has nothing to do with their potential, has nothing to do with what they're going to do in the future. In fact, nobody knows the potential we really have because it's literally infinite. And so it's rather sad that we have this, idea that somebody is their report card, or somebody is their balance sheet, or somebody is their bank account. And yet this is the kind of belief system that we're operating with. When we begin to understand how our mind works and why we do what we're doing, that's when we can change. When you plant an idea into the subconscious mind and through repetition, it has to move into form. It absolutely has to. Okay, so now I'm going to break it down even further. Are you guys ready for this? And if you're taking notes, I would say this is the part you want to take notes on, okay? This is the part you want to replay over and over and over again until you really understand it, okay? This is the creative process, and you can apply this to your sales in My Daily Choice. You can apply this to the way you operate in network marketing and how you build your teams, okay? You can relate this to any goal that you've set that you'd like to finish and not just abandon in your life, okay? So if you're taking notes, take notes right now. This is the creative process and how it works. All right, number 1, there's a power flowing into your consciousness. 1, okay? 2, now when this power flows in, we're creating dreams into the thinking mind. These are our ideas that we're having. Hey, maybe I can do this. Maybe I'll quit my job. Maybe I want to go full time into My Daily Choice. Like we're entertaining this idea, right? This is where dreams are built. Dreams are built in the thinking mind. So I'm going to put D here for dreams. Hopefully you guys remember what each of these things stand for, because it's kind of hard to draw with this. Okay. So number 2 is we're going to take those dreams and we're going to impress them onto the subconscious mind. And this is responsible for where our feelings are. our emotions and our feelings, okay? So number 3 is we're going to take those emotions and then they're going to be expressed with and through the body. Okay. Now stay with me. Number 1, there's a fat power that's flowing into your consciousness. 2, we're going to get those dreams and press them into the subconscious. That's where we're building our dreams. Number 3 is our emotions are expressed through the body. Now, what happens when our emotions are expressed through the body? This creates a vibrational change within us. Okay. So now your rate of vibration has increased. It has changed. Okay. When your vibration changed, number 4, when your vibration changes, that's when your actions will also change. Okay. This is the most very important part here. Number 5 is when our actions change, then the universe responds with a reaction. Okay. So I'm going to try and draw this here. So we go action. Oh Lord, I should just use the text tool, huh? You guys can see that. This is hard to draw on this thing. Okay. Action. And then I'm just going to abbreviate reaction. Oh, that's not an abbreviation. So I'm just going to put re-A for reaction. And so this is coming from the universe, cause and effect. Okay. And what you have in the middle is your results. All right. So number 4 is your vibration changes, and that equals your actions to change. Number 5 is actions change and the universe responds with a reaction. Okay. And number 6 is the reaction alters your results. Okay. It causes a reaction with the universe, and that's when it's going to alter your conditions, your circumstance, and your environment. Your results start to change. Now, you want to go through this a number of times. Okay. This is not something that you're going to just understand not the first time you see this. This is something you're going to want to look at a few times. And then now when you know this, when you're not feeling good, okay, when you wake up, you're not motivated. You wake up, you're just not feeling like you want to go after your goals. You wake up, you're just not, something just doesn't feel right. You know, you've gotten emotionally involved with the wrong idea. Okay. Or if you find that things that are coming into your life are not to your liking, you're getting bad results, you know, you've got to ask yourself, how am I acting, you know, and what am I emotionally involved with? What kind of ideas am I thinking? Because what we're thinking and what we're impressing onto our subconscious is the results, and is what, you know, the actions we're going to take, which is going to lead to the results. So this is the process. And as you understand it, and you can keep reflecting it into your own life, and, you know, and then you're going to know what's going on the inside. You can always tell what's going on the inside by what's happening on the outside. Now, most people are going to live from the outside in, but that's not the way that it really works. We really are operating from the inside out, or we need to. Now, James Allen said in his little book, As a Man Thinketh, he said, we think in secret and it comes to pass. Environment is but our looking glass. Now, I recently posted on Facebook, and people had the funniest comments there, but I said, what you eat in secret comes to pass. Your body is your looking glass. But for this lesson, we're going to say, when we think in secret, what we think in secret. So that means you can show up every day. You can show up to all your little network marketing events, and you can put a smile on your face, and you can pretend like you're all okay on the outside. But if you go home and you're miserable, you're depressed, you have anxiety and all these things going on, and you're just in havoc, you have vibrational chaos within you, that's the result you're going to get, because whatever your emotions are your guidance system, right? So if your emotions are all out of whack, then you know for sure you're thinking about and getting emotionally involved with the wrong idea. Now, the biggest mistake people make is they set their goals right here, and they never internalize them here. That's the biggest problem. Okay. They set their goals. Yeah, I want to make $1 million. Yeah, I want to make $500 a month, $5,000, $50,000, $500,000 a month. Yet they don't let it get into their emotional mind. And because they're not letting it get into their emotional mind, they cannot see the results of that. Does that make sense, you guys? And so the outside is a reflection. It's a mere reflection of the inside. Now, when you know that and you see somebody and they're out there and they're, you know, not doing so great, you can see what's going on in their mind because they're reflecting it on the outside. Now, this lesson's called the Genie, the secret Genie, because this drawing is the Genie. Now, what's happened is when Bob saw this drawing, it brought order to his mind, and he was able to then go out and teach it to other people. You're going to see why that some of the top executives in the world love this drawing. They love this because it brings order to what they're trying to accomplish. Your mind is either in a confused state, like I said, or in an orderly state. It's one or the other. And an image brings order to the mind. The image you have of things that are tucked in cells in your brain. And that's why when I say coffee or spoon, you guys have an image that comes up on your mind, right? Your car. These words trigger cells that contain an image. If you don't have an image of the mind, there's no cells of recognition. Confusion sets in, right? Okay, so when Bob first became successful, he didn't know why. It took him 9 years to figure it out. And this image brought him out of that state of confusion so that he could then go on to teach it. And that's why he started his career into the personal development space. Now, when you train to see this yourself as the stick person, okay, will have no difficulty understanding what's going on in your mind or in other people's minds. You have the ability, and you know this now, you have the ability to originate and create. This is what separates us from all of the other animals in the animal kingdom. Everybody, all the other animals live on instinct and they're in perfect harmony with their universe, right? But humans aren't, because we have the ability to create our own environment. That's why you see some people are super successful and some people are on the opposite end of that, very much in poverty and poor. And that's a reflection of their state of mind. Every person has genius locked up within them, every single person. And people say, wow, it's just, Jenna, we love what you've been able to do. Or Josh, you're just such a genius. No, you guys are all geniuses too. It's not just us. We've just taken different actions. And so your spiritual DNA is perfect. This is something you have to understand. And so if you're feeling low or you've got low self-confidence or whatever, right, think about this. Yeah, I know in the Bible it says we're creating God's image. So if you believe in that, that's fantastic because it goes right along with this, okay? Your spiritual DNA is perfect. And so our job is to let that perfection shine through. Once you realize you have the creative ability to chart your own path, then you know that all you have to do is get rid of the virus code, get rid of the paradigms, get rid of all the BS that you've been collecting over the years, get rid of your past traumas, get rid of the things that are weighing you down and preventing you from reaching your goals, get rid of the doubt, get rid of the indecision, the procrastination. Once you get rid of all of that, that's a virus code within you, then you can let that spiritual DNA, which is perfect, shine through. And now you're going to be living to your full potential, at least moving towards it. And then when you do that, you're going to feel like you're on fire every single day. You're going to feel like you're just so motivated. You can't not be motivated because you're working towards something amazing in your life. And it's exciting. You finally have a mission and a purpose. You walk with a little pep in your step, right? So that's what we need to know. So when this power flows in, we can create what we want with it. Okay. So I want you guys to know this. I want you to study this. I want you to play this on repeat. I want you to share this with as many people as you can, because the more we know about ourselves, the more you're going to be able to succeed on purpose, And I got to the point in my life, you guys, when I almost hit just about rock bottom in my life. And I got to the point in my life where I was like, I have to do something different. I have to change. I have to stop holding myself back. That's when I started seeing that I was creating everything in my life. And then if I wanted to do it, I had to take back control of what was being influenced upon me. What were my influences? What were my outside influences that were controlling me? So I want you to take inventory of that. I want you to study this week. And if you can do that, then you can start seeing the change in your life and in your business and in your team and in your sales and everything that you bring into your world. Again, I know Wendy's asking, what book was it? Think and Grow Rich, Napoleon Hill. That's the basis of this. He interviewed 500 of the most successful people in the world during the Great Depression. And he put a manual together for all of us, and it talks about this. So I thank you guys for hopping on. That's all I have for you today. And I will see you next week. Lesson 5. See you next week. Bye, guys.